HiGSA this year. And I just wanted to take a moment to introduce our organization, and then we'll have a few other people from our organization to talk about some of the events that we host. So Carolina, can you go to the next slide? Okay, great. So we are the Hispanic Graduate Association, and we're basically a student organization comprised mainly of Hispanic graduate students, but not exclusively. We're mainly a network of students to provide support for graduate students to help them acclimate to FSU and the culture here. We also aim to promote Hispanic culture throughout FSU, and we host several events that promote our community, building community, as well as teach and educate about Hispanic culture. So I'm going to pass it over to Louise, our president, who is going to tell you a little bit about one of our big events that's going on this year.
Hi, FSU family. Thank you, Susan. Carolina, can you please move to the next slide? Okay, family. Well, I'm no, then back. Yeah, that one. Okay, family. I hope you are all doing great. We are almost reaching half of the semester, so yeah, I hope that everything is going well. Some of our events I would like to mention Cinehassee, which is a current event we are having. Cinehassee is the only Iberoamerican Film Festival in town, and it is organized by HiGSA. This year we have been going virtual because all of this situation, but yeah, we are still having fun, and we are having a great festival. So I would like to encourage you to sign up. You can find more information on our webpage that is there on the slide, higsa.fsu.edu. You can also find more information on our social media, so please check them out. This year, the theme for the festival is social justice. It is good to see through the different movies, different viewpoints, different experience. So yeah, I just like to encourage you to sign up. Once you are signed up, we can send you all the information about the upcoming movies. This week, we are having this movie that is called Todos Se Van. And we are also going to have a Q&A session with the director of this movie this Sunday. So please join us. And yeah, without more information, yeah, I'm just gonna pass it over to my friend, Yeimy.
Thank you, Luis. Carolina, next one. Thank you. Some other activities that HiGSA does, and we are very proud of them, is that we work very closely to our community by doing HiGSA talks, in which our stellar Latin American and Hispanic people shine. Volunteering, this happened during summer, and we've been using our mask and reaching out the community, helping with providing food to the people that need them. We also have been part of the International Coffee Hour several times. This one is the special one, virtual, and let's see if we can make it as fun as the usual ones. And also meet and greets are a great opportunity to share this welcoming environment that the HiGSA community wants to provide to everybody.
Maybe one question, sorry, one question. Do we need to pay to participate?
Of course not. This is all from the heart. So whatever we do, it's everything is free. And also, if you need more information, if you would like to volunteer with us, to be part of the HiGSA talks, to join us in every activity that we do, you can join our room chats. The breakout rooms are designed to provide more information about these activities. Room number 1 will be in charge of a Hispanic discussion led by Maria Paula. And we want to talk in this room about Columbus Day and all the discussion around this issue. We have another room, room number 2 will be for the cooking people who are here for the recipe. So we're gonna further this information in the room number 2 with Carolina. Room number 3 is for those who are here and are interested in improving their Spanish. with our expert Natalia, who's a TA in the Department of Modern Languages and Linguistics. And room number 4 is general information about these activities, and it's gonna be led by Susan, our Vice President. So welcome to all those rooms, and you can move around them to find more about us. Also join us in our social media as the President invites you. And now I pass it on to Natalia and Jessie.
Okay, so for today, we're gonna be cooking this amazing tres leche that Jessie's gonna cook for us today.
Sorry, quick to interrupt. Caroline, do you mind to and share? Thank you so much. All right, let me transfer to Natalia and Jessie. Here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Globe Kitchen. Today with HiGSA, we are going to make a pastel de tres leches. This basically is a vanilla kind of white yellow cake that is soaked in a milky kind of sugary syrup. It is very popular throughout Latin America, and so for all the different countries that this is made in, there's probably variations of it. Even though I've made tres leches for years now, I spent all week like reading all about it, trying to go online and find some good stuff and put it all together to make the best possible recipe for y'all. And so we've made this at coffee hour when we've had people here, and I've kind of used a simpler recipe to make enough for 300 to 400 people. And so this is definitely a different recipe than our coffee hour recipe. Let's get into the ingredients and the tools here, and we will get going. First off, the cake that we're going to make today is we're going to make a sponge cake. And so the ingredients for a sponge cake are very simple. We've got 6 eggs here, and 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and then we're going to add a little bit of baking powder. And that's it for a sponge cake. The other version that's out there is a butter cake. And so that would be about the same ingredients here, except for you're going to also add butter and then use a different technique with the eggs. And so this is a little bit harder because of the egg technique, but I'm going to walk you through it. So it's actually pretty easy. All right, so for the milk syrup, we've got, so trace, we got 3. We've got condensed milk. So this is the thick, sugary, condensed milk. And we've got 1 can of evaporated milk. And then I've got this table cream. It's basically a canned light cream. You're gonna need 2 cans of this. And this is imported from Mexico, so it's actually kind of expensive. It's a couple dollars per can. So one consideration I was having in this recipe too is trying to make it economical. So if you want to substitute that table cream, you can just put fresh cream instead of the table cream, or whole milk even, that works fine. And so I've got all 3 of my milk creams here, and this, so you want to have about 5 cups total at once you mix it all together. All right, and then for the pan, I've got a 9-inch square pan here. This is going to make our cake 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches thick. You can use a larger pan. Your cake is just going to be more thin, and it will, if you use a larger pan, the cake will cook a lot faster too. So I'll show you how to test the cake to make sure that it's done, and you don't want to overcook it either. So you can use a whisk by hand with these eggs, but I've got a stand mixer here. You can use a hand mixer as well. If you have a power mixer, it's going to make it go a fair amount faster, but you can definitely do it by hand. It just takes more time. All right, so first off, you're gonna get your oven preheated, 325 degrees, and then you're gonna get your pan out, and you wanna get your pan all prepped up. So I've just got a little bit of butter here, and we're gonna create nonstick surface on this pan. So I'm just gonna take that softened butter, spread it all out. If you have pan spray, you can use pan spray for this too. It's a little bit more quick, but it's just a whole nother thing you have to get. So I like recipes that use as many basic ingredients and not extra ingredients. So if you're using a 9-inch pan, the batter is going to come up all the way to the top edge here as it bakes. So we're going to coat all the way up. If you're using a 9x13, you probably only need it to go up about halfway up the sides. Okay. So nice thin layer of butter. And then I've got a little extra flour here. And what you do is you just put about a cup or so of flour in, and then you just shake it all around. And this creates a non-stick surface for your cake. And it's also not gonna add any weird flavors to your cake or have any additives. This side part I do over the trash can. I don't know if you can see that, Laura. Just so that I can totally get the sides coated. There you go. So you want to get this coated first, because once you get your egg mixture and your batter all mixed up, you're going to want to get it transferred and into your preheated oven pretty quick. As time goes on, the egg bubbles you're going to create are going to deflate. And so once you get the batter mixed together, you want to be pretty quick in the oven. All right, so I'm going to put on some gloves here, and we're going to work on the eggs. And so what we need to do, I've got these eggs. These are extra large eggs too. I think they're easier to handle. You just get a little more egg out of them. But I've got 6 of them. I've been making edits to this recipe even today after I made this, my original recipe. And so I think the one that got posted might have said 5, but we post the recipe on Facebook, and I'll have an updated recipe for you all if you wanna grab it on our Facebook page. All right, so you're gonna want 2 bowls to collect your egg yolks and egg whites in. And it's nice if you wear gloves, just keep your hands clean, but it's not necessary. And so when you crack an egg, there's a few different ways to do it. You can crack it on the side of the bowl. You can crack it on a flat surface. If you crack it on the side of the bowl, which I personally like to do, you don't want it to go too deep or you'll end up breaking your yolk. And if you break your yolk, you just want to ditch that egg. You don't want to try to get any white or anything out, because if you get any yolk mixed into the white will not foam up the way you need it to foam up. So you just want to do a gentle crack. And then you're going to open up your egg. And then I transfer between hands like this to get the white removed from the yolk. Now, if you get a little extra white in with the yolks, that's fine. But you cannot get any yolk or any kind of fat mixed in with the white, or it will not whip up. So gentle crack here. Open the shell. It helps if you can open an egg with one hand too, but that's something that comes with some practice. All right, nice little gentle crack. And these eggs, they should be room temperature. If they're cold, they also will not whip up as well. So you leave them out for a half hour. There's plenty of time to get them to room temp. Okay. So this sponge cake recipe originally comes from Europe. There's a bunch of sponge cakes in Europe. In Spain, they call it bizcocho. And this cake was designed to, really be a sponge. I mean, it's in the name. They soak the cakes in Europe with sugar syrups, with different flavorings, maybe wine, maybe liqueurs, maybe citrus, all types of different things. But the soaking with the milk, I think, is definitely unique to Latin America. I guess in Italy, they do a sponge cake too, and that can be the base for the lady fingers, which is part of tiramisu, which has a cream layer and that kind of thing, and they soak it in coffee. But it's a really cool cake that holds up well to liquids, and I really prefer it over the buttered cake. But this is the extra step involved to make this, is you have to separate the eggs and beat these to add air into them. All right, so has anybody out there ever had a shell get in their eggs and they struggle to get it out. I know I did until I learned this little trick. I'm gonna break off a little egg here for you. Let me see if I can get some small pieces. I'm just gonna throw it in there. So here's my trick to get the egg shells out. So I got a little, you can see it in there, little bubbles. If you take your big shell and you make a cup with it, you're gonna break off any loose ends on the sides so you don't add any more shell. You can put this down into your egg and you can use it to scoop up the shell, and it just kind of magically sticks in there. And it makes it really easy to pull those shells out. You don't want any shells. Oh, that looks like another one. You don't want any shells in here because the Tres Leches cake is all about the texture. Super smooth and rich and decadent. And then you get a little crunch in there. That's just not going to be very tasty. All right, there we go. I got that tiny one out too. All right. So shells are out. And then if you're going to use a power mixer, you're going to want to first whip up your egg whites. I'm going to pour them all in. Then we're going to start it on a medium kind of speed, and then we'll work it up to a high speed once it starts getting a little foamy. I'm going to add a pinch of salt here too. And so this is going to mix up for a few minutes with a power mixer by hand. This is going to definitely take you about 10 minutes. At this point, I'm going to blend this, so we're doing it fresh. And I'm going to pass it off to Natalia. She's going to do a fun fact presentation for you on some Tres Leches, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the finished product here. So I'll see you all in a minute.
Thank you, Jesse. So I'm going to share my screen with all of you. Let me see. Just a second. And yes, like Jesse said, it takes a long time because we want, obviously, the eggs to be like a foam. So it takes a little bit of time for that foam to get to the right state. So let me share my screen really fast here. Oops. Okay. And let me go to my presentation here. So the Tres Leches that's the question. It's from Central America, but where? Where is it from? That's the question, right? So it looks like this. It's so delicious. Spongy, is soaked in 3 different milks, but it's originally from Nicaragua, this little triangle here in Central America. And here will be Mexico in this part, and then here is where South America starts to go. So basically, this amazing recipe comes from the 90s, and it comes from Miami. So that's why a lot of people are confused that where is Tres Leches originally from? Because a lot of people in Miami, they eat Tres Leches. So Tres Leches comes from this restaurant called Los Ranchos. That is the first Nicaraguan restaurant in Miami in 1981. And now the Tres Leches is considered a classic staple of Miami's Latin cuisine. A fun fact, like Jesse was saying, in Europe, the style of dessert dipped in liquid is known like trifle. So like when you soak a dessert, that's how they call it. Then this beautiful lady from Costa Rica, so Nicaragua is really close to Costa Rica, we share borders. She says that Nicaraguan Tres Leches is one of the most delicious ones that she has ever tried, because there's a lot of people who make Tres Leches in Mexico, in Guatemala, and they're all neighbors from Nicaragua. So if we see here, Tres Leches, 3 milks, evaporated milk, leche condensada from Nestlé, and just normal milk. And fun fact, In Nicaragua, there's this restaurant where they sell chicken, and the most popular dessert is the Tres Leche. And you will see this little dessert that kids love to eat all the time, and it looks just like this. The Tres Leche costs around $1, and the big container will be like approximately like $10 or less, depending on who is selling it to you. Then also, fun facts, we also have 4 leches, 4 milks. And it's when you add the delicious cajeta. And cajeta is a very popular candy, and it's made out of milk and other things that I don't have those facts with me. But it is interesting that you can also have 4 milks. And last but not least, we also have Pio Quinto, that is another dessert that is soaked, but in different liquids. And is soaked with flor de caña. Flor de caña is a very popular Nicaraguan rum that you can get it at Publix if you want to try it. And you can make this other dessert as well. In some part of Central America, the cake is soaked in a mix of water, rum, and sugar to create this pastel borracho. Borracho in Spanish means drunk. And what you do is you bring the water to boil, is sugar, cinnamon stick, cloves, and lemon peel to boil, and then you will add the flor de caña. And after all of these amazing, delicious desserts, I am 100% sure that you will gain 15 pounds. So those are the fun facts, everyone.
That is so lovely, especially the last piece. I so enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm dying to try it and see. I'm not an alcohol person, but see how drunk I will get. Thank you, Natalia. It's lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Young and Natalia. I am done whipping up these eggs, and so the whites are here. You can see they're nice and foamy, and they've expanded probably at least 4 or 5 times. And then what I did is I mixed that cup of sugar with the yolks and whipped them until they become very creamy and pale yellow. And the sugar is not going to melt into there. It's still going to be gritty, but some of it's going to have combined with the yolks, and it's got some air in it. And so one part of this recipe that might be a little different than others is I add a little bit of vanilla to each component. So I add a ½ teaspoon of vanilla to our egg mixture here, which is going to end up being our batter. And then I'm going to add a ½ teaspoon to the milks that are going to soak, and then I add another ½ teaspoon to teaspoon to the whipped cream topping. Okay, so we've got the yolks in the bowl, or sorry, the whites in the bowl, and the yolks are coming in. We're just going to combine these together now. And get every little bit of the sugar and yolks. Okay, and you're going to want to use a smaller kind of spatula, and you're just going to fold this in together. We're trying to preserve these bubbles with from the egg whites. We don't need to fully incorporate it right now, but we need to get it pretty well incorporated. And so what I do with the spatula is I scrape around the side and the bottom and kind of lift over the top. Scrape and lift. That's pretty good.
I just want to quickly weigh in. Carolina seems to do it at the same time, so feel free to weigh in if you want to. It seems so good.
Okay, so here I've got some flour, the 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder to it. This is baking powder, not baking soda. And whenever you're measuring flour or any kind of leavening, you always want to scrape it so it's flat across the top. You know you'll be getting the perfect amount. And before we mix this in to the eggs, we're just going to gently combine it in with the flour so it disperses evenly. And then you're also going to need a sieve here so that we can sift the flour gently in. And so we're going to sift the flour in a few batches. This also helps combine the baking powder and the flour. And we also will have no lumps because of this. And so the flour doesn't really want to combine with the eggs, so you do have to stir it a fair amount. We don't add any milk or any kind of other liquid to this batter. It's just the eggs are the only liquid. That's what I really love about the sponge cake recipes, is they're so simple. As long as you follow the technique, it's going to turn out really, really well. You don't have to fuss around with too many ingredients. Okay, yeah. So that's pretty well incorporated. We're going to add the next bit. Here's this one. Personally, I think the sponge cake is just a superior cake to the butter cake as well. The texture of the bubbles in the cake itself are very consistent. And also when you add the milks to the sponge cake soaks it up immediately. You don't have to set it overnight. That was one thing I discovered the other day. I thought it would definitely need to set overnight, but it literally soaks it up like a sponge. So I think honestly, we're probably going to switch over to this recipe for coffee hour, even though it takes more time to separate all the eggs and whip all the eggs for all, 300, 400 pieces. We can make it the same day without having to make it the day before, which is what we do now. Because we always have to let our butter cakes soak overnight to actually get fully soaked. All right, here's our third and final flour mixture. All right, so we are still just gently folding this in. It's going to deflate somewhat from each incorporation of the flour, and the batter is going to get obviously a little bit thicker. You're adding a dry ingredient. So don't worry, that's what should be happening. It should deflate somewhat. When this bakes in the oven, we want to do 325 because we don't want it to get dark brown. We want it to be a nice light golden color. And it's such an airy cake, it really cooks very fast. And what happens is these egg white bubbles in here and the bubbles that are formed from the baking powder expand in the heat. And so your cake's going to puff up quite a bit. But once you pull it out and it starts to cool, it deflates and it sets up. And it'll come back down probably just a little bit higher from when you poured it in. All right, so I'm going to scrape the bottom, just make sure I got everything, but you got to get all that flour incorporated. We don't want any speck of flour in there, and it's looking really good. Still some gentle turning here. Oops, got some on top here. There we go. All right, so I've got my pan that's prepared. I've got my oven that is preheated. And we're just going to gently pour batter. That batter looks so good. Looks like velvety. That's great. I'm gonna go ahead and pour the whole thing in. So if y'all ever bake a cake and it rose up really high in the middle and the edges were all really thin and overcooked, it's happened to me a few times. And this cake batter is actually kind of elastic. It's definitely a liquid, but what I do with this one is I'll push into the corners and kind of mount it up on the corners here as much as I can. And the edges, and try to make a little hollow space in the middle. And so when it comes out, it should come out more even and not so low on the corners. Also, that affects the cooking of the cake. So your cake, if it doesn't cook evenly, it's going to be, you know, overcooked on the edges and undercooked in the middle. And we're looking for consistency here, a nice, consistent baking time for the whole thing. All right, so it's all in there. It's going to go in the oven, 325, for about 20 minutes. And then I've got one here we're going to pull out that I cooked earlier today. So this is, when you press it, it should come back like a sponge. You can see it's got holes all in it, all from those egg white bubbles. You grab another fork. You're going to want to cool this off in the pan. And it shouldn't be hot at all. And you want to take 2 forks and you're going to want to poke holes in it.
While we're poking those holes, I did have a question for you, Chef Jesse.
Okay.
So would baking at lower temperature make it cook more evenly?
Well, the 325 definitely helps, yeah. With this is a delicate cake. So, so yeah, definitely. This one, I felt like it was turning a little darker brown than I wanted, and the center was still a little bit undercooked. And so what I did was I put it down to 300 for the last couple minutes, just so that it wouldn't brown the surface that much more. I would say this is probably about as dark brown as you want it to get. Even a little bit lighter brown than this would be fine too. But you want it, you know, the more it cooks, the darker it gets, you're going to get a different texture from it. So this is still very soft, very spongy. You don't want it to have any crispy parts or anything like that. Okay, so we just poke some holes in there. They don't have to go all the way down to the bottom. And so, yeah, another way that I test for the cake to be done is I use some kind of, you know, skewer, or this is just like a thermometer or whatever, something you can stick in the middle that's not gonna, you know, poke all the holes in the cake. And so you can kind of move the cake when it's in the oven, just kind of give it a hit. And if it, you know, has any liquidity to it, it's not done. But if it's firm on the top, I always, right in the center, will stick this in diagonally down to the bottom and pull it out. And it should come out mostly clean. If it comes out with any kind of, you know, liquid or milky kind of substance, you know it needs more time. And that's just the batter hasn't, you know, firmed up into the cake yet. Okay, so here's our milks. I actually need to give them a stir. We want them all equally incorporated as well. And then we're actually going to add another ½ teaspoon to the milks of vanilla. Now I've got, because I'm on a budget here actually in the kitchen, I've got some Badia Dominican style vanilla. It is an imitation vanilla, but it actually tastes really good. And it's probably 1/4 of the cost of real vanilla. So that's definitely an option to make this a little bit less expensive and economical for you. And I don't think it really takes anything away from it. Although in the kitchen here, we, you know, usually always use real vanilla for stuff, and I always prefer it, but it's not necessary. All right, let's fill that milk a little bit. I was trying to fill up my measuring cup too much. I'm living on the edge. All right. So now we've got that mixed up good. We're just going to start pouring this on top. And going to pour, kind of go around. We want all of this parts to get wet here. We want to moisten up the top of everything. We want it to start soaking in. One thing I also do is, once I've poured this in, you can take a serrated knife or like a thin little paring knife, and you can cut your pieces from this point too. But you can see it's just totally soaking in. And that's with the butter cake. It goes down to the bottom, the butter cake kind of floats on top, and then you got to let it sit overnight for it to really soak. But this one, I really love this, how it happens so fast. Okay, there we go. Excellent. So this is gonna, it's good that it's submerged. It's going to, oh yeah, look at that.
Yes.
It's going to take a little bit of time to soak up the rest of this, but it really won't take long. And you can pre-cut it too. Help the milk get down into the slices. And this actually, these are pretty thick. It's about 2 inches thick here, so I'm going to cut it into 16 pieces. They're not huge pieces, but what's nice when you have a square pan is it's easy to get perfect square little pieces. You just start in the middle. You always make your first cut in the middle, and then you can go from the middle from your cut to the side here, and then you'll always get equal sized pieces. It's a lot easier to eyeball the middle of two parts than trying to cut it from the side into quarters. They say it really just soaked all that up. It really is a sponge. Okay, so from here, the toppings can range. You could do a meringue topping. I think that is definitely popular in some countries. I know here, and most times I've had Tres Lechesi here, it's definitely whipped cream. So you can either, get like a canister of whipped cream and, garnish it with that, or, you can get some heavy cream and whip it up with, some powdered sugar and some vanilla as well. I've got that part of the recipe. I'm not necessarily going to show you all how to do that. It's pretty straightforward. But here is the final product. And so once it's been turned out, it'll start releasing its milk onto a platter. And then, so you see here, the crumb of the cake is very consistent, and it's semi-dense, right? It doesn't have big bubbles, and it's soaked. You can see that it's wet and it's soaked all the way through, and that is essential. It needs to soak all the way through. Tres Lechesi should not have any dry parts of the cake. And so that's one thing I always look when I'm looking at these recipes. I'm like, all right, let me see the picture of the final product here. And if they have they'll have a picture of their cake, and if the plate is dry and the cake itself doesn't look wet, I'm like, I'm not even going to look at this recipe. It doesn't, that's not what Tres Lechesi should be. So should definitely have, when you serve it, let's get a piece out here. Come on. The cake should be releasing some of this milk syrup that's from the platter. And then you always should get at least a little scoop of syrup on the plate. And then I personally really like this little bit of cinnamon as a garnish. It adds a nice, even just a tiny, tiny bit will add really distinct flavor. Definitely not necessary. Some people like it without any topping. They like it nude. Some people, like it with the meringue. And then oftentimes I'll see like maraschino cherry on the top, or fruit cocktail, kind of different little fruits and things on the top. But honestly, that's really to your taste. So you can enjoy it however you like. I will update that recipe and post it on Facebook again on Monday for y'all if you want to give this a try. Honestly, this is a really awesome recipe, and I hope y'all give it a shot. Yeah. So back to y'all, HiGSA and Yang. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Thank you. Jesse, though you cannot see the screen, but we have a lot of exciting faces, thumbs up, and also surprising faces, like how it looks so good. So also hearts for you,
all
Jesse.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Natalia, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with everyone? Also, Carolina, do you want to share anything since you were cooking at the same time with Jesse?
Yes, I saw Carolina cooking. I wanted to hear about her experience.
So actually, it took me a long time to beat the eggs like he said he was, because I don't have a professional mixer. So it took me a while. So that's what I was doing most of the time. And then I got them fluffy eventually. And then now it's in the oven. So hopefully by the end of this, I'll have something to show you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yay. Thank you, everyone.